Hello, welcome back, and we'll continue our exploration in this video of the C# methods and the different things you can do with them. Here we have right line max, and the intention here is a method that returns the maximum of the parameters that it's been passed, the max integer that it finds. So we should expect 10 to be printed here and 33 to be printed here. And I'll hit Control F5, and there we see that. Works flawlessly. And this technique is called overloading. That's where you have the same function name, the same method name, but different parameter lists. So something has to be different, right? So the name plus the parameter list is called the method signature. As long as the method signature is unique, then the compiler has no problem disambiguating which one you want to call. Right? So I can't have two methods in the same namespace, for example, that called max and that take two integer parameters, because which one do you want to call? But I can have two methods that have different same names but different parameters, because the function signature is the name plus the parameter list. And that parameter list can vary in number or in data type. So if I wanted, let's say, the max of double, I could have a max of double with two parameters here, and the compiler would match it up by the closest type that's available to it. So that's method overloading. Now, suppose I want a max method that has two parameters, three parameters, four parameters, five parameters, etc. This would get a little bit cumbersome. So I'm going to pause the video and I'll make modifications so that we can have a method that has a single method that has a variable number of parameters. So these are fixed parameters. You have to have three parameters here to call this one. You have to have two parameters here to call this one. But luckily, there's a way to express a method that has a variable number of parameters. Okay, as promised, I've replaced my two methods that I had before. I've commented them out, the one with two parameters and the one with three parameters, with a method that now takes a variable parameter list. So I have two parameters, three parameters, six parameters here, one parameter here, even no parameters here. And the way that's done is you use the keyword params at the front, and then the compiler will set up an array for you. So it takes these individual values and builds an array for you and passes it as integers. So that's how you can get variable number parameter lists. Note, this has the same restrictions as an array would. All the parameters have to be the same data type. So you can't have a variable number of parameter lists with different data types because the compiler wants to set up an array which is restricted to a collection of a single type. In any event, the parameter, when this method is called, it will set up an array with two items in it, three items in it, six items in it, one item in it, and zero items in it. And then you can use integers as you would a normal array. Here I have a candidate value. There's a constant inside the int type called min value. It's the lowest possible integer, -2 billion in sum. It loops then through the integers, and it looks at candidate values, and when it finds as it goes, it visits each individual integer in turn, looping through, and it looks and says, is this bigger than the current candidate? And if it is, it replaces the current candidate with that value, and then it continues on. Eventually RC will be the biggest integer that it has found. We didn't look at the details of the previous two, so we should take a quick look at that. With two fixed parameters, it just says if A is bigger than B, it returns A, otherwise it returns B. When it had three parameters to compare, it says is A bigger than B, and it's bigger than C, therefore A is the biggest of the three. Same type of logic with B, and if it doesn't determine that A is the biggest or B is the biggest, then C must be the biggest. But this looping parameter here allows us to return the max of an arbitrary number of integers. So if you have logic like this, this is very convenient to establish a variable number of parameter lists. Let's see how that runs. Hit Control F5, and we'll see our result. Here we have 10, the biggest number in that list. 33 the biggest number in that list, 123 the biggest number, etc. With 1, 33 can only be the biggest. And then with no parameters, the -2 billion in sum is the largest number found, because that's the initial value here. set up here. It loops 0 times and it returns that negative value. So we've seen method overloading with variable numbers of parameters, but we've also seen the ability to set up a variable parameter list with the keyword params in front, and then declaring it a normal integer array, or an array of any type, as long as it's the same data type, and then the compiler will build this into an array as it calls. So that completes our discussion of the various forms of C# parameters and method calls.